Yo. In 1949, the Geneva Conventions were brought into agreement, and since then, the world has lived in perfect harmony. But today is Saturday, which means I'm headed down to Sci-Fi Factory for my locals this week, and this week I intend to commit a heinous war crime, and that is to stun people until I can summon Exodia. Do not try this at your locals. You will be called a degenerate and people will not enjoy it. But I wanted to do it, and so we're gonna look at the profile and we're gonna see if we can get some Exodias here today. We're gonna start with the monsters. Super simple. Ojama green, Ojama yellow, Ojama black. This was originally supposed to be an Ojama deck and it just turned into a monstrosity. The deck would be stronger if we cut the Ojamas, but gotta pay respects to them because they are the main focus of this deck. So we have the 3 base Ojamas, followed by our 5 pieces of Exodia. Those are all the monsters. The Ojamas don't do anything, obviously. And then our Exodia is our win condition. It is one of our 2 win conditions. Our other win condition is our opponent scoops, which happens most of the time. But moving on to spells, we run 3 Mystic Mine. Our goal, again, is not to be a good person. It is to stun our opponent until we can draw Exodia. Mystic Mine is part of the lock that I'm going to show you that almost guarantees an Exodia. 1 pot of Duality and 1 pot of Extravagance. I would swap out for 2 Extravagances if I had to. I don't like the Duality reveals that I'm playing Exodia because I don't think it's obvious. In none of my matchups that I've tested and won did my opponent suspect I had Exodia. They just thought I was going to deck out like a loser. Next up is 3 Goddess Scold's Oracle. During your main phase, look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, rearrange them in any order. You can't normal special summon for the rest of the turn after you do this. We, of course, will not be normal specially summoning, but until we establish the lock, this can help us keep our opponent away from cards that are going to prevent the lock. And if we have the lock established, this will mostly annoy the opponent, but once the lock is established, there's literally nothing they can do. So 3 Goddess, 1 Terraforming, basically an extra copy of our Mystic Mine, can also eat an Ash Blossom if necessary. And that's it for our spells. Traps are where this deck is going to shine. Starting off with 3 Trap Trick. Want to be able to search the traps that I have to get what I need. 3 Paleozoic Dino-Miscus. This helps establish our lock at times. Once you see what the lock is, it can be disrupted by our opponent's cards. Sometimes we need to banish their board to change the number of cards on their board. Sometimes we just need to get rid of a problem card. Dino-Miscus kind of does it all. 3 Rivalry. Super important for our lock because we are going to lock our opponent into Beast, as you'll see here in a second. Then getting into the meat of this, Ojama Duo. Ojama Duo special summons 2 Ojama tokens to your opponent's side of the field. They are Beast, they are light, they are level 2 with 0 attack. And it just gives your opponent 2 tokens. This in tandem with Ojama Trio is the heart of our lock, filling our opponent's board with tokens that can't be tributed, and then Rivalry prevents them from being linked away for IP Masquerena or Link Spider because they can only make Beast. Most decks are not capable of doing that, and so they will be stuck with these 5 monsters. We have 1 Metaverse. It's basically an extra copy of Mystic Mine, but it lets me Mystic Mine the opponent after I duo or trio them. That way I don't have to play a mine on my own turn when I will have no monsters. Next up, 2 Waking the Dragon. Thinking about cutting it, but it can help me sometimes. The main problem with it is it puts a monster on my board, and my goal is to give my opponent monsters and for me to have no monsters so that my opponent cannot out my mine. Next up, 2 Spatial Collapse. This thing is super important to the lock. Can only activate when both players have less than 5 cards on their field. No player can have more than 5 cards in their control. That means on the field. Your hand doesn't count. Meaning, you duo your opponent, you trio your opponent, you play Spatial Collapse. They are now locked out of their board. Or if you trio or duo them and they have some back row set that's useless because they set imperms thinking that hurts you or whatever, your opponent is now locked out of their board. And Mystic Mine takes care of the graveyard and the hand for us. The duo in the trio plus spatial collapse plus rivalry plus mine is just game. The opponent really cannot do anything at that point without access to their board, graveyard, or hand. And they can't summon out of their extra deck because their board is blocked. This lock is the basis for what we're doing here. Spatial collapse is a huge piece of it. Just locking our opponent out of the board, making them commit the cards that they've played, or giving them the 5 tokens and forcing them to use them, which they will obviously not be able to do. This is how we're going to make Exodia. We're going to lock our opponent out. Oftentimes in testing, the opponent has been baited into thinking that they can deck me out, which is kind of the point when I'm digging into the deck with Duality and Extravagance and thinning the deck with Trap Trick. They think that they can deck me out because it's a 40 card deck. That's where Exodia comes in handy. I needed a way to not deck out when stunning my opponent. And then finally, 3 Solemn Judgment. This is to protect our minds or our rivalries, etc. Before the lock is established. Moving on to the extra deck. We'll go fast through the extra deck because it's really just a nightmare. 1 Ojama Knight locks 2 opponent monster zones, which can come up with Waking the Dragon. 1 Ojama Emperor on the off chance that we need to summon our 3 Ojamas. Actually, we run 2 of those. 1 Ojama King. Same thing as Ojama Knight, but this locks 3 zones instead of 2. 1 Elter into the Intis. Can be pretty useful to pop. We also run the Nova. The Nova is there for twofold. One, it helps us. It would help us with Maximus if we cared. And if I still ran the Mechaba. Otherwise, we can make Nova off Waking the Dragon and then summon on top of the Nova Cyber Dragon Infinity, which gives us a negate. We can absorb an opponent's monster if our board's been broken or if we're trying to establish the lock. Overall, just helps us deal with stuff. Totally awesome. A good disruption. Can loop a card. It can also be made off of the Dino Miscus if I don't Trap Trick too many of them away. Stardust Dragon protects Mystic Bind if I can get it out with Waking the Dragon. Red Eyes Flare Metal. Opponent has to pay 500 to activate card effects. This will obviously start burning themselves, and that's what we want. Time Thief Redoer, just to steal cards off the top of their deck, which with Skull Oracle, we can pick which cards are on top of their deck. And then finally, Coordius, just in case I need a big body to go for game that does some wild stuff. None of these cards come up too often. They're only made off of Waking the Dragon. I have no other way of summoning any of these cards except Ojama Emperor. It doesn't matter what we banish off Extravagance. It's more of a combination of cards to put in an extra deck of things that could come up, but pretty much never come up. Next up, 5 tokens. This is not really part of the deck, obviously, but you want to be able to hand your opponent tokens since that's what the whole deck is about. And then the side deck. I have 3 Mask of Restrict in the side deck. This is to hate Drytron players, but honestly, Drytron players are pretty dead in the water right now, so this probably won't come up. 3 copies of Just Desserts. This is so that I can burn my opponent in time in game 2 or 3, because these games tend to be grindy. And then finally, 3 D Barrier, just to shut down decks that can establish boards when I have an incomplete board. Am thinking of running 3 Droll and Lock as well, or 3 Lancia. Basically, any 3 hand traps, because I can swap those out for the Ojamas after game 1. Want to keep the Ojamas in for game 1, mostly just for fun, but after that, I can swap them out for any effective hand trap. So that's the deck lineup. And the goal, again, we want to see Exodia. Put this guy on the board. This is our primary win condition. Our secondary win condition is our opponent scoops. If we cannot do either of those things, we are going to lose. That is just how the deck works. This isn't meant to be competitive. It's mostly, I just want to make Exodia. So let's see how it goes. Hey, editor me, listen, these first 2 games are not worth watching. So let me just give you a quick rundown of what happens. Game 1, I'm up against Raid Raptor Tri Brigade. I try to establish the Ojama lock hand this man 5 tokens, flip a spatial collapse, and he links all the tokens off for some Tri-Brigade monsters, which was a big surprise to me. Didn't even think about that. So I lost. He managed to out everything I had. I just wasn't drawing very good, and I had the absolute worst matchup. I cannot beast lock people with these tokens who play beast and want beast monsters on the field. It's free material for him. Really wasn't doing much for me. So go to game 2, or match 2, I should say. I'm up against Dragon Link. This was much closer. First game, I flip Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon on him. He hits my Waking the Dragon, summon Red Eyes Flare. He insists on playing through his whole combo. By the end of it, he has 2,000 life points left, but he does out everything I have. Not really much to do there. The next game, I just draw hard garbage. Really couldn't do a lot against the Dragon Link. So it was a little closer, but still, it's 2 matches of me losing with Stun Exodia, which means it just takes a long time for the games to go. So instead, here's the games that happened after, where some wins actually happened and some plays were actually established, and let's see what happens.
So Falco's effect goes out. Oh, the current special summon. Dragon's effect, target and destroy.
First up against Dino, I'm going to set an Ojama Black and a Mine to make sure the Mine sticks for now, and then I'm going to skull the top of his deck. He's got a Prosperity, so I'm going to try to keep him off of it. Passes on Baby Sarah to out the Mine. I'm going to crash the Ojama into it and set my second Mine that I drew into. I'm going to set a Judgment. He's going to try to Heartbeat. He's going to protect the Mine. Overall, I draw my other Mine as well, so I have all 3 Mines. I'm going to try to put tokens on his side of the board to prevent him from outing the Mine, in case he can get rid of the baby. He keeps trying to link, he tried tributing for a Nibiru, which he can't. He tried linking away for a Cyber Stag, but it takes effect monsters. I'm going to try to find a Spatial Collapse to lock him into these 5 cards he's got. Because once that's done, I just find Exodia, and it's only a matter of time. So I get him under the lock. He makes Pinkertops, which really isn't a big deal. Set Trap Trick, just in case. Like I said, you can use Trap Trick to force your opponent to hit Waking if they pop the whole back row. I'm going to pot, find the Spatial Collapse, which is good news for me, but he's got, I got to banish the Pinkertops to get him under 5 cards. Once I do, banish that, flip the Rivalry, flip the Spatial. He is now locked in the Beast. He goes ahead and scoops it up. Game 2, opponent's going to opt to go first. He's going to just try to pop off here, which is the right move. He doesn't want me to go first and establish any kind of crazy board. Ends up making a Lagia. I'm going to Metaverse and then use it to bait to get the Solemn out and get the Mine active. He's going to play more cards, but at this point, we're just kind of devolved into I set Oracle. I'm keeping him away from things that are important. But I kind of stunned myself. I have a Solemn in my hand that I can't set. There's 1 set already, and I'd like the other to be set as well. But I'm stuck with the fact that I have 5 back row. He's going to start giving me tokens with Lost World to try to balance our monsters out. I start trying to crash them, but he uses Lost World to protect 1 to slow me down. He's lost his entire extra deck, so he can't link any lower. It turns into a set pass fest. I activate Lancey instead of just discarding it in phase because I had too many cards in hand. And the Gravekeeper Trap holds me to burn me for 2k, dropping me down to 500 life points, which is scary. So I don't activate any monsters for the rest of this game. I am terrified of getting burned for 2k again. It's set pass for a while. He pops the Skull Oracle, which is good. We get into a Solemn fight. All 4 of us resolve all our Solemns. Mine sticks to the field as a result. At this point, I need to try to find Oracle to keep him away from his last Solemn, because that could really destroy me. But as we'll see here, we're still set passing. Opponent's going, doing his thing, but eventually the magic is going to happen. Pass. 7. In phase.
Exodia. That's your one.
There it is.
There it is. Oh, hold on. I want to get his effect on it.
No! I am up back to back against Dino. So I have a little bit of idea what's going on. Camera came on late, but I duality. He sees that I has Exodia. Puts me at a big disadvantage because the whole tournament, no one knew I had Exodia. But I have a couple cards on board. He's going to go ahead. I'm going to establish my mine. Going to get the trio on board, handing him a bunch of tokens and stuff. He's going to try to link it off for Cyber Stack like the other player, but it takes effect monsters. Eventually, he makes the Nightmare. He will try to use Nightmare's effect, but he can't. He'll make the Superconductor Tyranno. He'll pass. I'll just set some cards. He's trying to make plays. I'm going to banish the Tyranno, I think. He tries to tribute for Pankratops, but you can't tribute. He Kaiju Slumbers, which is good, clears the board. I just reestablish the mine, and he scoops. We go to game 2. He's going to opt to go first. I don't really draw a lot that I can work with. He tries to Kaiju Slumber with no monsters, which isn't legal. So eventually he destroys it for an effect, makes Lithosogem. I'm going to set up some monsters, set the Collapse, try to put him under anything. But he's going to just make the Nightmare again, and that combined with having Superconductor, he's eventually just going to beat me down for game. I can't really do anything. I couldn't establish any kind of board here, which is rough. Camera is again late to the party for game 3, but I went first, giving him a trio and a rivalry, so he's locked in the beast. He's got the trio. He activates Draconic Diagram, and he's going to destroy a card from hand. I think he's going to look for Lithosogem again, because that seems to be his target for it. I think he's playing True King variant of Dino with some Kaijus mixed in. So he's going to do his thing. I'm just going to sit comfortably. I'm fairly confident he can't out even this amount of the board. But he could still Kaiju Slumber, I think. He could still Kaiju Slumber to get out of this, which I know he has. So I'm not sitting too comfortable because I have to be aware of the Kaiju Slumber. But if he can get one more card on board and I can establish the lock, I'm fine. He's going to pass for turn. I'm going to find a duo, which I am going to end up handing him in the standby, I believe. Hand him the duo, put 2 more tokens on board. I'm still under threat of Kaiju Slumber, but that is really the only card he has at this point that can hurt me. Find the Terraforming. Terraforming is, of course, going to find Mystic Mine, and when he sees me at it, he's just going to scoop.
Hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a sharpshooter. What else should I be?
So those were the games today, 2 and 2. It's not great. It's pretty average, middle of the road. But honestly, was not expecting a whole lot out of Exodia today. All I wanted to do was successfully Exodia one person, which did happen. He had scooped game 1, so he couldn't really afford to scoop game 2. He tried to play it out, only to realize I was playing Exodia. To his surprise, it wasn't something I sighted in. I'm main decking Exodia. That's the point here. Overall, it's whatever. There's some things I could do better. I could swap out Terraforming for Demise of Land. I could get another Pot of Extravagance so I don't duality, revealing that I'm playing Exodia. That's a big bummer. Overall, though, I had a lot of fun, honestly. Mystic Mind Stun is obviously not the most fun for everybody, but and I don't think it's the most fun way to play, but flipping an Exodia on someone after failing miserably and getting bodied the 2 games previous to that, it felt really good to flip Exodia in tournament setting. Will I try it again someday? Probably. Not anytime soon. I'm gonna go back to Orchist, where I belong, and probably play some Evoke Dogmatica soon. But overall, had a lot of fun at locals today. It was good to see my boys today. Good to see them do pretty well. They both did a lot better than me because they weren't trying to be degenerate to Exodia, innocent people at locals. But overall, had a lot of fun. Hope you had fun and enjoy this, and I'll catch you next time.